Success. They'll figure that one out later. So glad that you're here today. And I told you weeks ago that I was going to be teaching a lesson about finance today. And I've chosen an unusual title for it. It's simply Look Out for the Sharks. Somewhere, somehow, they have come up with the things. But before I get into it, let me tell you a story about sharks. I was deep sea fishing in Florida and had chartered a boat. We were out off the coast of Panama City, Florida, or Destin, and we were catching king mackerel. If you've never been fishing for king mackerel, all of them were about 5 to 7 pounds apiece. So you're looking this big to this big. That's not a fish story. That's the truth. They're this big to this big. And you're fishing off the back of a boat that's just trolling around, and they're going around in circles. They got a buoy in the water, and all you do is just go around in circles. And on every line, you've got 2 hooks, and sometimes you've got 2 fish at the same time. And king mackerel are the only type mackerel that will fight you like a largemouth bass. They will literally stand up on their tail and fight you. And you're fighting them. They're the most fun fish there is to catch, is king mackerel. And it was just a fun time. We were catching all these fish, and every time we passed around the buoy, we loaded down, and there were 4 of us on the boat. And honestly, I got so tired of fishing. We caught so many fish. My arms hurt. I went up and drove the boat for a while and told the captain to go fish. Well, all of a sudden, the fish quit biting. Well, I thought I did something wrong. I'm still going around the same buoy like we were been doing for the last 2 hours. And I said, hey, because he said we were in a school of fish. I said, well, I guess school's out. You know, the fish have gone home. He said, no, there's a shark in the waters. I said, what do you mean there's a shark in the water? So he comes back up on the top. And he gave me a set of binoculars. He gave another guy a set of binoculars. He said, start looking for the fin. There's a shark in the waters. Anytime the good fish go away, there's a shark in the water. And sure enough, in about 3 minutes, we spotted an 8-foot leopard shark, and he had an M1 carbine rifle, and we shot the shark. And there was another oceanography group that wanted to study the shark. They wanted to come in and get it, so they came in and got the shark and took it away. And within 30 minutes of doing the same thing we were doing, all the good fish came back. Now, that's my shark story. When I was 22, my wife and I had good credit. Everything was good. We had decided to get a JCPenney credit card. You know, they were going to give us a credit card from JCPenney's. They gave us a temporary card to use and shop that day up to $200, and everything was good. And then I got a letter in the mail. And it said, we have had to decline your credit application for a credit card. Well, that upset me. That upset me. I didn't like somebody to decline. I said, what's going on? So I drove to the local JCPenney store, and I saw their credit manager. And the credit manager said, well, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I said, well, I want to know what happened. And they said, well, do we have your permission to pull your credit report and check? And I said, sure. And they pulled my credit report. I knew the credit manager. And the credit manager said, oh, I see the problem. There's a shark on your credit report. I said, what? She said, there's a shark on your credit report. I said, how did I get a shark on my credit report? She said, well, obviously, somewhere you borrowed money from one of these little payday type loan places. I said, I have never, ever in my life. And she goes back and she looks and she said, last year, did you buy something and finance it for $79? I said, are you stupid? She said, well, you've got it on your credit report. It's from this little loan company. I said, well, they better get it off my credit report. And so we started tracking it down. And what happened was, my wife and I had gotten married. We were young. We'd gotten married. We had this hand-me-down furniture that there was really no furniture at all. And the first thing we ever bought together was a little dining room suite. A table and 4 chairs, and it cost $79. And we were in the furniture store looking at it, and we were so excited about buying it, and I told her, let's put it on layaway, and I can pay it off next week when I get paid. And the manager of the store said, well, we have 90 days, same as cash. I said, really? Well, I could pay it off in 30 days. I don't need 90 days. I can pay it off in 7 days. And they said, well, let us deliver it today. Sign right here. Well, bless your heart. That very next day, they took that paperwork down to that finance company and got their $79. And I paid them off 2 weeks later. But that was called a loan shark. And that shark got on my credit report. And it took me a year to get that thing released and make them take it away. So when you wonder why I chose look out for the sharks, because the one thing that the credit manager at JCPenney told me is that when you do business with a loan shark, all the good credit goes away. Now, in life, we learn lessons the hard way. Anybody here ever been to the school of hard knocks? Those not a fun school to go to, is it? They say experience is the best teacher, but nobody ever told you how much the tuition to that class was going to be. Because I have paid dearly for some of my experience. And so today's part of what I want to share with you are some of these very things. Proverbs chapter 21, verse number 25 says, the desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. I do not believe in a handout. I think our federal government is making serious problems whenever they are overpaying people to stay at home rather than go to work. When they're making people dependent on the government rather than taking away their desire, which the Bible teaches that a man don't work, don't let him eat. Brother Blizzard said, man don't want to work, they ought to break his plate. Now, I know that's cold, but let me tell you something. God put inside of every one of us something that says we need to work and do something right and productive. And if we don't, then we go against everything that God ever taught. But the desire of the slothful, I want this, but he refuses to work. All right, everybody stand up. I'm going to teach you a song. My wife, honey, are you going to play for me today? Huh? No, I don't need music. I can do it without it. All right, here's the words of the song. When your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Hey! You got that? When your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Hey! Got it? Here we go. When your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Hey! Let's do it again. When your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Hey! All right, that's good. Thank you. I got one more. M-A-K-I-N-G-M-O-N-E-Y, making money. We all like that, don't we? All right, God bless you. You can be seated. Basically, what I've just taught you in a song form is that when you spend more than you bring in, you're bankrupt. That's what our government is doing right now. It's spending more money than it can possibly ever bring in, and it's bankrupt. And eventually, it's going to catch up if we don't do something about it. I can't do one thing about what the government does, and I'm not here anti-government. I'm not being political. I'm just being honest with you. But I can do something about my house and hopefully your house and this house. My job as a pastor is to help get you to heaven, and I want to see you get there and accomplish the things that God has for you to do. So how we manage our finances is very important to God. The Bible talks a lot more about possessions and money than it does about anything else. Because one thing I learned as an investigator years ago is you always follow the money. You follow the money. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And that is the truth. People love money. Why do you think I sang the song? M-A-K-I-N-G-M-O-N-E-Y. We love to make money. I mean, I would pick up odd jobs and I'd go around singing to myself because I'm making money. We all like money. Everybody enjoyed getting the stimulus checks. But somebody had to pay for it. You will eventually pay for it with your taxes. Or your children will pay for it with the taxes. Eventually, it all is going to come back. So how you handle your finances can be a reflection of your walk with God. So everybody ought to be on a budget. You need to have a budget. Have you ever put money in your pocket in the morning and you just live throughout the day, and at the evening you reach your hand in your pocket, you don't have any money? And you didn't lose it. You just spent it. And sometimes we put our money in pockets with holes in them because we don't know what we really did with it. One of the reasons I love the Dave Ramsey plan was the fact that he said you put a name on every dollar before you get it. Too many people wait until payday and it's about to burn a hole in their pocket. So I want to talk to you about some of the pitfalls that can come with not handling your money right. Proverbs 22:1 says, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. If you've got a good name. My dad, whenever I graduated high school, the day of graduation, my dad ceremonially walked me into the back room of the house. Now understand, anytime my dad took me to the back room of the house, normally it was to give me a whipping. If he ever said, go to the room, I'm going to get it. But I was graduating. I was 17 years old. I was graduating high school, and I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. He said, go to the room. Oh, Lord, what did I do now? I was the baby of the family. My brothers were all gone. They were married off. I was going into the room. And Daddy walked in there and he said, son, I don't have any money to give you to go to college on. You've worked the whole last year and you've sent your paycheck off and you've paid for your first year of college. And he took his billfold out. My dad always had a $100 bill in his billfold. He called it his hiding money. What he meant, that was his emergency money. That's not I'm going out to eat money. That's I'm broke down side the road money. And he pulled that $100 bill out and he put it in my shirt pocket. And I knew that $100 bill meant a lot to my dad. I knew that $100 bill was important to him. He kept that $100 and he put it there in my pocket. He said, now, son, I am going to do two things today. First thing, I'm going to give you my $100 bill. He said, you know this means something to me. He said, now, I don't care if I had to carry $100 just like my dad did. It's amazing how many things we do that our dad does, okay? But he said, I don't care if you buy bubble gum with that $100. I want to give you that $100 bill, and I'm going to give you a good name. I do care what you do with my good name. And before I die, you will give me an account of what you've done with the good name that I gave you. I said, okay, Dad, I'll do my best. Now, I can't tell you what I spent that $100 on, because I don't have a clue. But I do know that in 1998, when I got the phone call and we were in church that my dad was taken to the hospital in Jacksonville, Florida, at Mayo Clinic, I jumped on an airplane that Sunday evening after church, and the next morning when he opened his eyes, I was standing in Jacksonville St. Luke's Hospital looking at him, and my dad said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What are you doing here?" They tell me I'm sick, but they're stupid. And I said, "Well, they told me you were sick. Stupid or not, I came." And they ran a bunch of tests on my dad. And during those 3 days, all of us boys showed up, and Dad talked to each of us. And on Tuesday of that week, he told me, "Sit down next to my bed, son." And I didn't know that my dad remembered the day I graduated from high school. But he reached back from 1971 to 1998. He reached back 27 years in his memory. And he said to me, he said, "I want to know what you did with that $100. I said, "Dad, I think I bought bubble gum because that's what you told me I could do." He said, "I don't believe that." He said, "You probably took your girlfriend out to dinner." I said, "No, I didn't, because I left that same night from Minnesota. I didn't have a girlfriend up there to take to dinner." He said, "What I really want to know is what you've done with my good name." And I sat beside my dad's bed and held his hand, and I walked him through my entire life, the good and the bad, the successes and the failures. And when I finished, my dad said, "Lean over here, boy." I leaned over next to my dad, and he kissed me right here on my forehead. He said, "You made your dad proud." Little did I know in 3 days my dad would be dead. But it made me cognizant of the fact that there were things taught to me that have not been taught to everybody else. My dad and mom tried to teach me to always live within the means. Live within what you have, and always have some saved for emergencies. So I want to quickly walk you through some of the sharks that are in the water that sometimes people just never talk about. I did not know in 1998, after my dad's death, I was called to St. Louis, Missouri to speak to a educator seminar. And I'm wondering, why in the world are they having me talk to educators? These people got more degrees behind their name than thermometers. And they're bringing me in to talk to all of these college presidents and all of the Bible school teachers and administrators. And Dr. David Norris spoke right before me, and Dr. Little spoke right after me, or the next day after me. And they put me right sandwiched between these two doctors to speak, and my subject was, look out for the sharks. Because somebody had heard me teach about loan sharks in a Bible college class that was auditing our class for accreditation, and they took it back to St. Louis and said, this ought to be taught in all of our Bible schools. So, and I was doing exactly what I'm doing there. I was telling stories about what happened in life and different things, and so it was very fresh to me. But I said in the course of that meeting, how many of you ever can think back to 15 years ago? You're old enough to think back 15 years, and the rage at that time was 125% home equity lines of credit, HELOCs. They were making 125% credit line loans, if you were a homeowner, you could borrow up to 125% of the value of your home. If your home was worth $200,000, you could borrow $250,000 on that home. And I made a statement at headquarters, the United Pentecostal Church. I made a statement in front of all those educators. I said, I will make you a promise that if this continues in the trend that it's going through right now, that 10 years from now, there's going to come the biggest, ugliest housing bubble burst that's ever been, and it will bankrupt America. Little did I know that I was prophetically speaking 10 years into the future, and the debacle that happened in 2008 is exactly what happened. You didn't have to qualify to get a loan in those days. You go on stated income. If you had good credit, all you had to do was tell them, I got the income to do it. They would write you a loan. Somebody said, well, we're heating up for that same thing again. No, we're not. The people that have gotten loans at this time have qualified for loans. It's not like giving out free money. So what I was trying to get people to understand, I hear advertisement on the radio as I'm driving down the road is, take the equity out of your home, go on vacation, improve your home, buy this, buy that. They want you to get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. That's what they want you to do. Well, if you start eating up your equity in your home in bites like that, you're not going to own anything. You're not going to have anything. Oh, well, you got to leverage. Now, be careful when you start leveraging yourself and putting yourself in a position where you're borrowing things you can't pay. The Bible said that we shouldn't borrow what we can't pay. So somewhere we have to use our brains a little bit. I was amazed that I was riding down the road the other day, and there was a commercial came on the radio from don'tbebroke.com. And they're interviewing the president of the company. And he said, you know, there's so many bad stories out there about payday loans. What does it really cost to borrow $500 for a week? And he said like $17. He said, but that's a whole lot cheaper than having a bounce check or having to pay a late fee to the real estate company because you're late on your rent. Well, they don't tell you the whole story. I normally teach this where I have a whiteboard behind me and I can do a bunch of drawing and show you some numbers, so you're just going to have to trust me on some things. Payday loans are the worst thing you can do. You hear me? Payday loans are absolutely the worst thing you can do to get money. I don't care what you're going through, stay away from payday loans. They're worse than Tar Baby. How many of you ever heard the story of Tar Baby when you were growing up? You never heard the story of Tar Baby? Oh man, now I got to tell nursery rhymes again. Tar Baby was this statue that looked like a baby. And the rabbit came up and said something to him, and he didn't say anything. And he said, if you don't answer me, I'm going to hit you. And so he hit him, but his hand got stuck. He said, turn my hand loose. If you don't, I'm going to kick you. And he kicked him, and his foot got stuck. Well, if you don't, I'm going to kick you with the other foot. And he kicked him again. That one got stuck. And he hit him with the other hand. Now all four of them stuck. Then the guy that had Tar Baby came out and got the rabbit. Said, dinner, you know. When you start dealing with a payday loan company, it's worse than Tar Baby. You're going to get stuck. First and foremost, their annual percentage rate that they normally charge at the average one is 520% a year, APR. That's 10% a week. It's 10% a week. There's 52 weeks in the month. Somebody multiply 52 times 10 and see if you come out with the same math that they taught me in school. But here's the worst part of that. The minute you get a loan from a place like that, it can destroy your good credit. The sharks are in the water. The second worst place that you can ever go and try to borrow money is title pawn. Oh, we could just get a little money on my car. I was pastoring in Augusta, Georgia, and title pawn was just coming around, and I saw one down the street, and I wanted to buy a different car, but I just needed a little bit of a bridge loan to carry me for about 30 days because I had something coming in that I'd sold, and I was waiting on it to wrap up, and I thought, I'll just go in there and see what it'd cost to get $500 from a title pawn. I came out of there in about 5 minutes, and I said, that guy's nuts. So I went back to my hometown to have lunch with my friend that was a real estate broker and found out he owned a title pawn. And I said, Jerry, how can you do that? He said, man, you got to understand, 72% of the people that pawn the titles to their cars lose them. 72% of the people that borrow money on their car because they loan you 1/4 of the value of your car. So if you have a car that's worth $4,000, they'll loan you $1,000. But the day they loan it to you, you are signing over a power of attorney to the title to that car to them. Now you got a payment that's due on that thing. You're actually supposed to pay it off in 30 days. In most of them, some of them will set it up for a longer period of time. But when he began to show me the numbers of what they charge people in renewal fees, rewrite contracts, he said everybody that owns a title pawn company has a brother-in-law that owns a wrecker. He said we charge $250 to repo one. Then we charge $30 a day storage. I said, that is highway robbery. He said, that's how you make money. He said, because the next block down is where the car lot is that resells them all over again. He said, we take the cars down there, we resell them, and what we do is we ask people to pay 1/4 down on a $4,000 car, pay us $1,000 down, and we'll finance it to you. He said, we got all of our money back. He said, we're rolling in the dough. We're just rolling in the dough. But people oftentimes jump into things without anybody ever telling them the dangers of the things that are behind these loans. And so I felt like today I wanted to talk about finances a little bit. Now, it was interesting. I had about 75 educators in St. Louis at the seminar I was teaching. And I was only supposed to teach for an hour, and I had a whiteboard there, and I was writing on the whiteboard, and I had all these examples. I only have 45 minutes here to talk to y'all. But as I was drawing all these numbers out and showing people how these payday, buy here, finance here, car lots work, be careful when you start going to, buy here, pay here, because they control everything. Well, when your credit's not good, I need that second opportunity finance thing. It's 25% interest most of the time when you get into that. I mean, that's just dumb. You're better off doing without and walking. I mean, I know walking's free and it ain't crowded, but you need to understand you're better off to try to buy you something until you get your credit straightened out. To try to buy you something just to get by, to get you from place to place. Pastor's trying to help somebody here today not get in trouble later on. It always amazes me that people go and get their taxes done at H&R Block or one of these other places when it's tax season, and they get their taxes done and they find out, guess what? I'm going to get a tax refund of $1,000. And then they find out they can go across the street and they'll make them a loan for their tax refund right now. But it's going to cost them $200 for 3 weeks. But you know what? Poor people said, I don't care. I want my money now. Don't ever take financial advice from a poor person. It's like taking diet advice from a fat person. It ain't going to work. Find somebody that's got a little bit of corn in the crib that's been through it. But if I said at the close of the seminar there, they asked me to keep going. I was 55 minutes into it, and I looked up, and I was still on point number 2 out of point number 7. I said, folks, I'm sorry. And they said, no. Your Brother Glass was in charge at that time. He was over the education department of the United Pentecostal College. He said, Brother Blizzard, he walked up to me. He said, you keep teaching. We're going to hold lunch for an hour. You got another hour. Well, an hour later, he's over there. He said, we're holding lunch another 30 minutes. You got to finish this. So I finished it, and my closing statement with them was this. Look, if you got yourself in a financial mess and you need somebody to help you see your way through it, I don't want you to ever be embarrassed, but I'll be willing to help you find some help to get you through this. I said, God forbid, I'm sure nobody in the room here has one of these payday loans or in one of these situations, but there are ways to get out of these things. There are legal ways to get out of these things, but if you need my help, you can always reach out. Well, we went to lunch, and over the course of the next 24 hours, they found out I was staying at the Hampton Inn, and I had 11 people contact me. 7 of them had payday loans. You see, the problem with getting a payday loan is that the interest starts to eat you up, and they keep adding so many things to it, is that you turn around and get another one to try to satisfy this one, and then you get another one, and it's worse than Tar Baby. You got everything hung with Tar Baby. You can't get loose from it. It's only getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. To you young people, don't ever start that. To our senior citizens, don't ever get desperate enough that you turn to that. I'm telling you, don't do it. If you're ever in a situation that it's between you and eating, you come to me. I'm your pastor. I'll help you get, I tell people all the time, I'll help you get on a budget. We got people that are CPAs, we've got people that are accountants that can help you get your finances straightened out and do what is right. The next thing I want to talk to you about, and normally I would do this if it was just men in here, but I want to talk to everybody in here. You need life insurance. Everybody in this room needs life insurance. Now, I've had people say, now, preacher, I don't believe in that. If we trust God, we don't need life insurance. That's dumber than a box of rocks. Now, if you are married, fellas, if you're married and you're the primary breadwinner for your home, if something happens to you, what's going to happen to your family? You see, I've pastored people that when the man died, the woman had to have 2 dinner dates a week just to eat. And that's industrial strength stuck on stupid. I started many years ago carrying $250,000 term life insurance just so that I could sleep at night. I kept that insurance when I was so broke I couldn't pay attention. Because I found out it only cost me at that time about $300 a year to have $250,000 worth of life insurance. For 20 years, that's all it would cost me, is about $300 a year. We always think that insurance is so expensive. It's not. But I called it my sleeping insurance. I could sleep at night knowing that should something happen to me, my wife is okay. See, until you know what it is to sit down with somebody and look across the table at them whenever you're trying to plan out somebody's funeral because somebody died, and they look at you and say, no, there was no life insurance. And now you're not just trying to figure out the funeral cost. Now you're trying to figure out how this person is going to live. When that happens and there's 2 or 3 little biscuit snatchers running around the house, you realize this person's in trouble. But you don't want to tell them how bad it's going to be. I beg you, get some life insurance. We've got people that write life insurance right here in the church. You can go to Xander.com. I'm not getting paid to promote anybody, but there are all kind of places you can go and get insurance without it costing you everything, and you can make it through. But if you start to understand how that money works, Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9 said, honor the Lord with your possessions, with the first fruits of thine increase. When we put God first in everything in our lives, the Bible tells us that we need to honor the Lord. You know what? We're real generous on giving everything till it comes to our money. You know, the minute it comes to our money, it's kind of like the 3 old ladies sitting in the back of the church. And the preacher got up and he said, the church is in revival, but it's like a baby learning to crawl. It uses all of its strength to crawl. And the old lady punched the one on the other side, and he said, he's preaching now. She hollered, let the baby crawl, preacher, let the baby crawl. He said, and then the baby starts to walk. And that baby is so proud because it's unsteady steps to start with. But after a while, it catches its balance and it starts to walk forward. She said, oh, let the church walk. Preacher, let the church walk. He said, and then after it gets its good balance, it starts to really run. And the church is at a place right now where it's starting to run. Let the church run. Preacher, let it run. He said, but it takes money for the church to run. Let it crawl, preacher. Many, it's going to take money. Just let her crawl. But the truth is, I want to see God's blessing on every single person in the church. And I said it last week, and I have already told you that I was going to teach on this coming up. But when we are tight financially is the first time the devil comes along and says, you can't pay your tithe. Well, you need to understand that every person that's ever tithed has been tried and tested. There's come a time whenever you've had to face it and say, you know what? I just can't afford to do that. But then it's a choice you make. Do I put God first and trust Him? I'm going to ask how many people in here, and I hope I don't embarrass anybody, has ever been at that crossroads where you had to make a decision and it was tithing time? I don't know what to do. Now I want to ask you, how many of you trusted God and you paid your tithe and God came through for you? There's your answer. Look at God's track record. Now, it may not happen the same day, but you know what? God's got ways of doing things that blow my mind. How many of you read the story in the Bible where He sent the hornets to drive people out? Let me tell you something. You may be good and fast, but you ain't outrunning a hornet. Now, I will guarantee you they'll get your pudgy little legs going. When God sends the hornets to get you out of it, look, God has all the resources at His fingertips. The Bible said He owns the cattle of 1,000 hills. The writer said He owns the hills and the taters in the hills. God knows how to take care of His children. He is bound by His word. The minute you don't put God first in your finances is the minute you bring the curse on. Malachi chapter 3 said, your finances are cursed. I don't want my finances. I don't want your finances to be cursed. When I first got into real estate, I had been in a lot of business. I'd done a lot of things, and God had been good to us, and I chose to go into real estate. When interest rates were 18%, Jimmy Carter was president, and the day they gave me my real estate license, they said, "Welcome to a sinking ship." That's what they said when they handed me my real estate license. "Welcome. You just got on a sinking ship." And my first year in real estate, I made a grand total of $8,000. 1980. I spent $4,000 of that buying placard cards and signs and everything else. And my kid was eating the window putty thinking it was cookie dough. I mean, we were so poor we couldn't pay attention. Oh, in addition to that, I was working for a Christian school that I'd started, and I was getting $25 a week doing that. My wife was running the school getting $25 a week. Don't ask me how we lived that first year, because I can't tell you. I cannot stand right here in shoe leather and tell you how we survived that first year, because I don't know. Financially, it was impossible. But we never missed a meal. We didn't get on welfare. I did have an old lady in the church that got commodity cheese. Anybody remember what commodity cheese was? And she would give me half of it, because she said she didn't need that much cheese. I learned to love commodity cheese. I still love commodity cheese. If any of y'all got any of it, that was some good stuff. I learned to make grilled cheese sandwiches. I learned to make cheese, everything you can make with commodity cheese. Somehow we ate a lot of rice and beans and beans and rice, but we got through that year. And then I got a job offer. I got a job offer to go to work with High Brands Foods. And they were going to pay me, my salary was going to be $79,000 a year, plus commission, plus a brand new car. And they said probably about a $120,000 package. Now, I didn't have to pray about that. But my wife said, "You better pray about that." And we prayed about it. We were on a 3-day fast. And God said no. I said, "Now, God, do you know how bad things are?" God said, "Yeah." Now, I don't have time to tell you the story of the miracle that God worked in the next 90 days. But suffice it to this, I didn't work it. God worked it. God did it. But I remember the very first real estate sale that came up after this little juncture in time where I turned down this job. When I went to that real estate sale that day, I took my checkbook with me. I walked in with my checkbook, and the attorney in Georgia, you don't have title companies, you have attorneys that close everything. And I laid my stuff on the desk, and I laid my checkbook down. And the attorney kind of looked at me like, "What are you doing?" The buyer and the seller came in. We all sitting around the table, and we're working our thing out. Everything's going good. Everybody's signing papers. Everybody gets done. And they hand me my check. The attorney hands me my check. And I take out my checkbook. He said, "You don't have to write me a check." I said, "I'm not writing you a check." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm writing God a check." He said, "What do you mean you're writing God a check?" He said, "You know, I don't understand." I said, "It's my tithe check." He said, No, all that's not yours." I said, I understand. He said, "You've also got expenses. You got gas, you got this, you got this, you got this, you got." I said, "No, you don't understand. if I walk out this door today, the devil's going to work on me before I get to the office with this check, and he's going to try to tell me to analyze how much I spent on everything else and cut that thing down. Let me tell you something. I made God a deal that I'm going right off the top with it, God, and every time I had a real estate closing after that, I walked in with my checkbook, and it got to the place he said, hey, how much we writing God today? Do not give the devil an opportunity to talk you out of your blessing. That year, I made over $150,000. And the next year, nearly $250,000. Do you understand something? God has been good to me. But I made up my mind I was going to put God first. I'm believing God wants to bless His children. But you're going to have to put God first and keep Him first. Use a little bit of sense. Stay away from payday loans. Stay away from title loans. Stay away from HELOC loans. Well, I need a HELOC loan. For what? Well, to fix my house up. Save your money. Well, my air conditioner went out. That's what your emergency fund's for. Let's stand. I could spend 2 days just talking about the goodness of God. But you need to set yourself a goal to be debt-free. And as a couple, you need to get on the same page with your finances. Don't leave it to one person just to pay the bills. Y'all need to sit down and talk together about how you're going to handle it. Remember, delayed gratification is the best gratification. If you want something, save for it. Have you ever saved for something and when you got it, you really treasured it because it was important to you? I had one new bicycle in my lifetime. Every bicycle I ever got from the time I was this big up was one my daddy had bought at Goodwill and repainted. But I got to making some money. And when I was about 13 years old, I made up my mind. I saved and went and bought me a Western Flyer at Western Auto. Y'all don't even know what Western Auto is. But I bought me a Western Flyer bicycle. Cost me $30. I saved that $30 up. It took me about 3 months to do it. But I'm going to tell you something. I didn't park that bicycle out in the rain like all the others. When it rained, I put it in the basement. I put it under the house. My daddy said, you take better care of that. I said, that's because I bought it. I saved for it. When you do that, you'll appreciate what you got. Dear Jesus, thank you for these wonderful people that have come to hear us today. Now, God, I pray something said here today would reach into a heart. God, if there's somebody here that's in financial distress, that's got themselves in a mess, give us wisdom to help walk them out of that mess, God, because you never fail. Help us to be in covenant with you, and God bless your children. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. God bless you. The youth department, I think, has some pizza out front if you need a break. We're coming back in about 12 or 13 minutes with praise and worship.